Have you ever dropped a baby?
Look, if this is not a trigger warning for what is to come, trust me, things are about to get a hell of a lot worse. To put it bluntly, Calle Casas's 2022 domestic Spanish thriller La Mesita del Comedor, translated as The Dining Room's Small Table or simply The Coffee Table, is every parent's worst nightmare. Okay, so imagine combining the stress of building janky IKEA furniture with the "this is fine" meme and that scene from Hereditary to create a loose reinterpretation of Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, and you basically have the shocking ordeal that's about to unfold. The Coffee Table tells the story of a turbulent couple called Jesus and Maria, who move into an apartment with their newborn son Catano and plan a lunch date with Jesus' older brother Carlos and his new girlfriend Cristina. However, as the title suggests, after a tense argument over the purchase of a butt-ugly coffee table, Jesus is left alone with his son while Maria goes shopping, only for the coffee table to unexpectedly shatter and decapitate the baby. Yeah, I'll give you another moment to decide. What ensues is a profoundly guilt-ridden, dread-inducing existential crisis as the traumatized Jesus attempts to hide the tragedy from Maria as the lunch continues as planned. It is the epitome of sinking into your seat in devastation as you gruelingly beg for the film to put you out of its misery. Yet, at its core, The Coffee Table is technically an extremely pitch-black comedy that sardonically lampoons the subtle absurdism of relationships and parenthood, while bluntly interrogating concepts about unconditional love, purpose, fulfillment, and the unending pursuit of happiness. Comparatively, it's actually not all that far from Yorgos Lanthimos' Dogtooth, although I imagine most of you are still trying to process the harrowing premise to notice any of the themes I just mentioned, so if you're willing to stomach this awful misery, I don't think I have to tell you to brace yourself. The Coffee Table opens with an intense birthing scene to basically throw us into the inconsequential pain and suffering we're about to experience, later tying itself back into the profound symbiotic love a mother shares with her child. However, it's this vintage Roré coffee table designed in Sweden but obviously made in China using ivory, fake gold, and supposedly unbreakable glass that catalyzes the events that transpire. The film deliberately juxtaposes the two extremities of actual life and artificial artifact to establish a symbolic duality between them, as the meaningfulness of their existence ties into the overarching conflict of Jesus and Maria's complicated relationship. The first 5 minutes of Aenean purgatorial furniture buying tells us everything about the status of their characters. Jesus grows frustrated at Maria for rebuking his interest in the coffee table after making literally every decision in their relationship up to that point, including the interiors of their own house. As such, Jesus, who was initially granted permission by Maria to choose an accessory for the house, sees the coffee table as less of a necessary furnishing to tie the room together, a la the Persian rug in The Big Lebowski, and more so a self-admitted stubborn reflection of his own pride to make a decision for himself, regardless of its fundamental importance. Yet ultimately, this is all superficial to the real contention between Maria and Jesus, that being their newborn son Catano, whom Maria wanted, while Jesus admits it was not the right time for him to become a father. It's unfortunately a tale as old as time. We have two parents who are at perpetual odds with each other and unable to effectively communicate their needs, and refusing to compromise in ways that are healthy for the both of them. It's a relationship surviving on one-way transactions based on competitive ownership, where both of them are fundamentally incompatible with sharing a life together and have wrongfully concluded that the ideal glue to hold them together is starting a family. As a result of bringing a child into this turbulent vortex of theirs, they selfishly created a catastrophe by lighting a fuse that cannot be put out. Call it superstition, call it a monkey's paw, call it karma, as Maria does. While there is nothing inherently cursed or supernatural about the coffee table itself, it introduces a cruel symbolic omen into their broken relationship that sparks a causality they could have prevented had they communicated much sooner in their relationship. Very late into the story, the film just overtly hands the audience the satirical thesis. Jesus remarks that it was a grave mistake on his part to purchase the coffee table, given it causes the tragedy that transpires. However, what he doesn't realize he's doing is blindly scapegoating the real mistake that's long festered in the couple's relationship. The mistake isn't buying a coffee table, the mistake is ultimately in having a child because it's not something they need in their life right now. Of course, that's not to say the baby is unwanted, it's much more nuanced than that. Both parents do love their son unconditionally, and we will explore that more soon. But if you're still pedantically asking what exactly makes The Coffee Table a horror movie by definition, well, it all comes down to how it evokes the persistent existential dread and uncertainty that comes with being a parent, especially when you fear not yet being ready for the overwhelming responsibility it entails. The thing is, while Jesus is open about being unready, Maria is dealing with her own doubts of being a good mother, which she confesses to her friend Anna, who sympathetically relates with more experience, thus easing the fears about having the lows that come with the highs. Now, for the record, I am not a parent to an actual child, so I cannot relate to the specific experience, but I do know for a fact that I do not want children, not only because of my own mental health struggles, but because I know that I'm too selfishly work-centric to give up all my time for them, and that is something no child deserves. It makes me think of people who've told me, oh, you'll want kids, you don't know what you're talking about, it'll change you and this, that, and the other, but I am definitely not going to take a risk like that to find out that I'm actually right. There are parents who have kids for selfish reasons. They love the idea of being a parent, but aren't willing to accept the ceaseless responsibility. The way I see it, no child should have to inherit your misery or the guilt of the stress that you put them under because you unfairly and unwillingly brought them into the world. The film profoundly puts it into perspective the unconditional nature of actually wanting to be a parent. Anna tells Maria to enjoy every moment she has to herself, but despite it all those hardships of being a parent are outweighed by the uniquely powerful love they have for their children. The pain, as it were, is soothed by the happiness a child will always bring them. Look, I know by this point many people have checked out over the fact I haven't talked much about the whole fucking manslaughter of a baby plot, but all the gut-wrenching anxiety that permeates throughout the lunch as Jesus wallows in self-destructive pity, not knowing how to tell Maria about what happened, is a much easier stress to digest than the deeply rooted mistake that led to the accident to begin with. We could get into a prolonged discussion about the ethics of causality, but my brain would explode from the philosophical rabbit hole it would take us down. I think the discussion of what it means to fundamentally have children is far more existentially terrifying than anything else. Again, the film is very much in the vein of Yorgos Lanthimos' Dogtooth. It's deadpan, cynical, and nihilistic, but it's less an indictment on poor parenting and more so an indictment on individuals who wrongfully choose to become parents. There is a fear to the notion Anna tells Maria that your life completely disappears for your kid, your sole existence is purely in service to their survival, and Maria literally says as much. For Maria, what makes life worth living is her newborn son. It's a powerful sentiment, and from the outside looking in, I cannot begin to imagine that beautiful feeling must be like. When a friend told me that having children changes you, I assume that incomparable, unexplainable feeling each parent in the film talks about is exactly what they mean. Like life, there is something to be said about how we take love for granted, and being a parent is a daily reminder of how grateful many of us are to have it. Anyway, time for a jarring transition. After the baby's sudden death, which the film lingers on for an uncomfortably long time to let the shock well and truly settle in, severed baby head and all, Jesus attempts to clean the mess and puts the body in the crib as Maria returns. It's an intensely visceral film from here on out as the ticking time bomb looms in the background as Jesus is perpetually tormented by guilt as drips of blood and psychological apparitions of his crying baby constantly antagonize him. It's an incredible performance that's enhanced by tense editing choices and shallow depth of field as we get closer and closer to the inevitable bubble that's going to burst. You're almost made to feel complicit in the baby's death as the film sardonically mocks Jesus with the notion of just keep smiling at life until Maria finally questions his injury and the blood on the carpet, to which he explains the table simply broke, much to her delight. It's further compounded by the fact that Maria continues to criticize and antagonize Jesus as he eventually confides in her that he does in fact love her and seeks forgiveness for the pain he's put her through. While it's obviously from a place of guilt, what twists the knife even deeper is them rekindling their lost affection despite Maria being oblivious to Jesus' grief and his efforts to hide the fact that he doesn't plan on sticking around for very long. The overwhelming chaos leads Jesus to seeing only one way out via his own death, but before he can commit, it boots him in the bollocks when Maria gives Jesus' brother Carlos and his girlfriend Cristina a tour of the baby's eventual bedroom, igniting further sentimental reflection on the unconditional love they have for their child. Further conversation on the nature of love sees them ranking the order in which they view their friends and family, saying their child should always be number one. It's cold, unconscious small talk where it questions the metric of love. Can you quantify it? What makes love unconditional? Again, I'm not going to ponder every detail, otherwise I'll have an existential nightmare about it, but it does bring up how jokingly cynical society often is about relationships. For example, Carlos plays up the whole ball and chain shtick that every dad I know does about surrendering and doing what the wife wants. It's not worth the argument. It's sort of a boomer thing, but throughout my entire life, it's almost culturally within tradition for men and women to be like, oh, typical other half, what are they like? Obviously, I don't take it too seriously, this is often just banter, but more times than not, I've heard this shtick so often in life that it makes me think, why the fuck would anyone get married if this is how they all get on? It's like we just submit to expectation because that's what society has conditioned us to. It goes right back to the couple's broken relationship. Is the concept of starting a family simply the natural order as opposed to being the constructively correct choice for them? In the worst instances, I have felt genuine stigma and pressure into the idea of starting a family because for some people, for some contrived reason, their tradition sees being childless as somehow wrong, even though all of this is a social construct that we invented. There is no objectively natural or correct order in which to do anything in life. We decide that for ourselves, and our cultures and communities then reinforce it. While all of what we've discussed is ultimately viewed as incidental small talk during a lunch that's destined to be forgotten and not to be taken too seriously, the pressure underneath it all culminates in Cristina revealing that she is 4 months pregnant unplanned, causing Jesus to scorn Carlos for being careless in his choices, before leaving to record a suicide message, only for Carlos to intervene and of course discover the truth. However, before they can enact a plan in which to reveal the harrowing accident to Maria, there is one other messy incident we need to address in the form of a Chekhov's gun, that is, the neighbouring 13-year-old Ruth, who arrives with her dog to unleash hell. Let me explain. Okay, so there's a seemingly inconsequential plot point established early in the story that Jesus' neighbor's daughter Ruth has a weird romantic interest in him despite his complete rejection of the idea. She basically blackmails him into telling Maria that he's going to leave her and run away with Ruth after they apparently kissed in an elevator, none of which actually happened, but it can be so easily framed to be misconstrued out of context. In all the interactions Ruth brings up, She thinks Jesus was leading her on, but from his perspective, he was just being an innocuous friendly neighbor. However, out of context, the power imbalance and circumstances are unavoidably suspicious when looked at under a certain light, despite Jesus actually just being an innocent guy in all of this. Regardless, as I said, it ends up being a disturbing Chekhov's gun when bad timing sees Ruth barge in out of nowhere to tell Maria the truth, only for her dog to find a baby's head under the chair, to which the fallout unravels in an instant, with an utterly devastating ending in which Maria takes the baby's head and jumps from the balcony. Ironically poetic given Jesus was planning to do the very same thing. It brings it all back to a sentiment Maria says earlier. It's worth existing just to feel everything I feel for him. But with her baby now gone, she has nothing to live for. In the bleak aftermath, Ruth, Christina, and Carlos are left in shock, with Carlos only being able to mutter the phrase "the coffee table" as the police discuss a second jumper, naturally being Jesus, as we see an apparition of him, Maria, their baby boy, and of course the coffee table, morbidly bringing them together as a family for all eternity. If you're not feeling depressed after all of that, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, stay safe, stay away from coffee tables, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye. Fucking nailed it.